6 weeks after my wife told me. The baby wasn't mine. My father-in-law showed up at my front door in Barrie, with a casserole dish, and the kind of look on his face that meant he needed something. It was a Thursday evening in late October. The kind of cold that doesn't warn you. It just arrives. I had just gotten home from a site inspection in Aurelia, and my boots were still wet from the mud near the foundation. I hadn't eaten since noon. I was standing at the kitchen counter trying to decide if reheating leftover butter chicken counted as cooking when I heard the knock. I opened the door and there he was. My father-in-law, Gerald. 63 years old. Retired school principal. A man who once told me at our wedding reception that I was the son he always wanted. He was holding a ceramic dish covered in foil, and there were snowflakes melting in his gray hair. "Patrick," he said. I looked at the dish, then at him. "Gerald." He held the dish out slightly like a peace offering. "Sandra made her beef stew. She thought you might not be eating properly." I stepped back and let him in. Not because I wanted to. Because curiosity is a more powerful force than self-preservation. And because 34 years of being a reasonable person had made me allergic to shutting a door in someone's face. Even when I probably should. He set the stew on my kitchen counter and looked around. My apartment was small. I'd rented it furnished after moving out of the house Leanne and I had shared in Innisfil. There were boxes I still hadn't unpacked sitting along the hallway wall. A camping chair I was using as a dining chair because I couldn't bring myself to go to IKEA. A half-finished mug of coffee on the counter that had gone cold 2 hours ago. Gerald's eyes moved over all of it the way people look at a car accident. Careful, a little horrified, trying not to stare. "Sit down," I said. It wasn't really an invitation, more like a traffic direction. He sat at my kitchen table. I stayed standing. "This isn't about the stew, I said. He folded his hands together. "No. It's not." Gerald was not a man who wasted time. I had always respected that about him. Past tense. "It's about the baby," he said. "The baby, my wife's baby. The one she'd conceived 6 months into our marriage with her coworker, a project coordinator named Brendan, who drove a leased Audi and had, by all accounts, never done anything difficult in his life. The baby who was now 3 months old, and living in the house I used to share with Leanne. The house we'd bought together in Innisfil, with a government first homebuyer's rebate and what felt like everything I had. I had not contested the pregnancy. I had not needed to. Leanne had told me herself when she was 7 months along, after Brendan had made it clear he wasn't interested in being a father. She had cried. She had said she was sorry. She had said she didn't know why she had done it, which I had come to understand was the honest version of a much harder truth. I had moved out 2 weeks later. The DNA test was a formality that confirmed what we already knew. I had signed nothing. My name was on nothing. I said, "What about her?" He winced. "She doesn't have a name yet. Leanne is still deciding." "Gerald, what do you want?" He looked at the table. "Leanne is struggling." I almost said something that would have ended the conversation right there. I caught it just before it left my mouth, which my therapist would have called growth. "That must be hard," I said instead. He looked up. "Hopeful," I added, "though I'm not sure why you're sitting at my kitchen table." He pressed his lips together. "Because you're steady, Patrick. You've always been steady. Even when things were hard, you showed up." There it was, steady. That word had followed me my entire adult life like a slow-moving truck and I couldn't pass. Steady Patrick. Reliable Patrick. Patrick who pays his property taxes on time and never raised his voice once in 4 years of marriage. Patrick who coached junior hockey for 3 seasons because someone needed to. Steady was not a compliment. Steady was a job posting. "She's overwhelmed," Gerald continued. "Brendan isn't involved. He signed away his parental rights last month. The baby has been colicky. She's not sleeping. Sandra and I try to help when we can, but we're 2 hours away in Peterborough, and Leanne is alone in that house." I said nothing. She'd someone stable in the child's life. I pulled Alots out the chair across from him and sat down slowly. "Let me make sure I have this right," I said. "Brendan makes the baby. Leanne carries the baby. Brendan signs away his rights, and somehow I'm being handed a casserole as a preamble to being asked to fill in." Gerald's jaw tightened. "I'm not asking for you to replace Brendan." "What are you asking?" He was quiet for a moment. "Just to be present. She doesn't have anyone. The baby doesn't have anyone." I looked at him for a long time. Gerald was not a dishonest man. He believed what he was saying. That was what made it so hard. "I was her husband," I said. "I was the one who was going to be a father. I had a name picked out. I had a list of things I wanted to teach a kid someday. And then your daughter made a different choices, and now you're sitting in my apartment, asking me to be present for the consequences of that choice." "Do you hear what you're saying?" His filled. He didn't answer. "I don't hate Leanne," I said. "I don't hate the baby. But I am not a backup plan, Gerald." He drove back to Peterborough that night, still holding the casserole. He had never actually set it down. I stood at the window and watched his taillights disappear down the street and felt something I couldn't name. Not anger. Not grief exactly. Something closer to the feeling you get when you realize the game has been rigged for a long time. And You've only just started reading the rules. I had spent the previous 5 months doing what people call putting yourself back together, which sounds noble but mostly means figuring out how to grocery shop alone and not catastrophize when you wake up at 3 in the morning with nothing to do but think. I'd kept going to work. I was a project manager for a mid-sized construction company out of Barrie. Residential builds, some commercial. The kind of job that requires you to track 17 things at once and never look panicked. Being good at it had probably saved me that year. I had also started seeing a therapist named Dr. O.C., which took me an embarrassingly long time to do, and which turned out to be one of the better decisions I'd made, since the whole thing fell apart. He was the one who had taught me the word triangulation. Which is what happens when people who don't want to deal with each other use a third person to carry messages, pressure, and guilt between them. My father-in-law's visit had been textbook. I called my older brother the next morning. His name is Fletcher. He lives in Hamilton, works in insurance, and has the particular gift of telling me the truth, in a way that doesn't make me want to hang up. She sent your father-in-law with a casserole, Fletcher said. She didn't send him. He came on his own, Patrick. Okay, probably she knew he was coming. Fletcher was quiet for a second. And he asked you to what, exactly? Be present, those were his words. Just be present in the baby's life. He drove 2 hours to ask you to be present. He made it sound like he was just dropping off dinner. Fletcher said, he wasn't just dropping off dinner. No, he wasn't. Fletcher exhaled. What did you say that I was not back? Good answer. We were quiet for a moment. Then Fletcher said, she's going to try again. Not Gerald. Leanne herself. He was right. I knew it the same way you know rain is coming, not from the sky exactly, but from the feeling in the air. Leanne and I had no direct contact since I moved out. Anything urgent went through her sister Audrey. There hadn't been much to say that the lawyers hadn't already said more efficiently. The divorce was straightforward as divorces go. No children, which was one of the only mercies the situation offered. I had kept my truck and my tools. She had kept the house, which still had my name on the mortgage for another 4 months, until the refinancing cleared. Which was its own particular kind of ongoing aggravation. I had not seen the baby. I had seen one photo that Audrey had sent without asking. A small pink face wrapped in a hospital blanket with a yellow duck on it. I had looked at the photo for a long time. Then I had put my phone face down on the counter and gone for a run, which is what I do when I don't know what else to do. The following week, Leanne texted through Audrey. She wanted to meet. Not to ask anything, Audrey said, just to talk. Leanne had something she wanted me to know. I stared at the message for most of a Tuesday. Meeting Leanne felt like choosing to stand in the path of something I had already survived. I didn't still love her the way I had. That version of us had closed. But there is a kind of emotional muscle memory that doesn't care about the calendar. Sit across from someone who once knew your coffee order and your worst fears, and suddenly, 4 years of being a person together comes back into the room whether you invited it or not. I agreed to meet. Tim Hortons on Dunlop Street, public, bright, the kind of place where nobody is going to make a scene over a double-double. She was there when I arrived. She looked exhausted in the way that's hard to fake. Not performed exhaustion, but the real kind, where someone's face looks slightly too heavy for their bones. She was wearing a jacket I recognized from when we were married. There were formula stains on the sleeves she hadn't noticed. She stood when I came in. Hi. Hi. We sat. I got a coffee. She already had one she hadn't touched. I didn't ask my dad to come, she said. I looked at her. I didn't, she said to I promise. He told me after I was angry with him. I believed her, which surprised me. I didn't trust her the way I once had. That kind of trust doesn't come back like a refund. But I believed her in that moment. What did you want to tell me? I said. She wrapped both hands around her cup. Your mother has been calling me. I went very still. My mother, Vera, 68 years old. She lives in Collingwood and taught elementary school for 31 years and has, in my experience, a deep and unshakable conviction that she alone can see how everything should be arranged. She's been calling you, I said. Leanne nodded. Twice a week for the past month. She wants to see the baby. She says she considers her a grandchild regardless of the circumstances. I set down my coffee. Okay. And she's been telling people. Leanne said. She pulled out her phone. She's told your cousin Heather that you were too proud to do the right thing. She told your aunt on your dad's side that you had abandoned an innocent child. And she told a woman from her church, someone named Marguerite, that she was heartbroken. Her son wouldn't step up when a baby needed him. I read the screenshots she slid across the table. My mother's handwriting in iMessage is distinctive. She capitalizes things that do not need capitals and uses tits the way other people use silence. I read it twice. She said I abandoned an innocent child. Leanne looked ashamed. Yes, that baby is not my child. I know, Patrick. That's why I wanted you to see this. I looked at her. Did you tell her to do this? Leanne's eyes went sharp. No, absolutely not. Patrick, I told her to stop. I called her 3 weeks ago and told her that you owed me nothing. That the baby was not your responsibility. She told me I was letting my guilt make me passive. I almost laughed. She said you were letting your guilt make you passive. Yes, my mother told you that. She did. I looked out the window at Dunlop Street. A woman was walking a very small dog, in a very large coat. And neither of them looked pleased about the weather. Thank you for telling me, I said. Leanne's eyes filled. I'm trying to do right by you. I know it doesn't change anything. But I didn't want you blindsided. I nodded. It did mean something. Not enough to undo the year I'd had, but enough to keep me from adding her to the list of people I was currently furious at. How is she? I said. Not the baby's name. I didn't know it yet. The baby. Leanne said, she's good, she's starting to sleep a little longer. A pause. She looks like me. That's good, I said, and I meant it, which surprised me a little. When I left the Tim Hortons, I sat in my truck for 10 minutes before I started it. My mother was out there reshaping the story. Again. She had been doing a version of this my entire life. Deciding how things should be, and then describing reality until it matched her preference. She had done it when I dropped out of a pre-med program at Queen's to go into construction management. She had done it when Fletcher moved to Hamilton and she told people he was just going through a phase. She had done it when Leanne and I got married. Actually, she had told me she wasn't sure about Leanne, and when I'd asked why, she said she had a feeling, which was her way of saying she wanted to be the last word. Now she was doing it with a baby. I called Fletcher from the parking lot. She's telling people I abandoned a child, I said. Silence. Then, she's telling people that Leanne showed me the screenshots. Vera said that yes. Fletcher exhaled slowly. Okay. Well, what? She's building a version, he said. The version where Leanne is struggling, the baby is innocent, and you're the only one too bitter to do something about it. It's the same play, Pat. Different cast. Why is she doing this? Fletcher was quiet for a moment. Because if you step in, even a little, the whole thing becomes less ugly. If you're involved, the story becomes about love and family, persevering. And then nobody has to sit with what Leanne actually did. I stared through the windshield. Snow was starting. Not enough to be serious, just enough to be annoying. She's not going to let this go, Fletcher said. No, she's not. So what are you going to do? I thought about it. I don't know yet. But I'm not letting her tell that story without answering it. The family group chat, which my mother had named the Collins Crew, in 2019, and which I had muted approximately 400 times, started up 2 weeks later. I had left it after the separation. My mother had added me back. I had assumed it was accidental until it happened a second time. The first message I saw was from my Aunt Rosemary. Patrick, your mother is very worried. We all are. That baby needs family around her. I hope you can find it in your heart. Then my cousin Tyler. No judgment, man, but kids don't ask to be born into complicated situations. Then someone named Beverly, who I was fairly certain I had met twice at Christmas. Family is family, Patrick. Blood or not. I stared at the screen. Blood or not. The baby shared no blood with me. That was the one thing in this situation that was unambiguous. Then my mother. I just want what's right for everyone. A child shouldn't pay for adult mistakes. I know Patrick has been through a lot, but I believe in my heart that love can make a family, and he has so much love to give. I took a screenshot. Then another. Then I went to my email, where I had a folder I had been quietly maintaining since Gerald's casserole visit. Audrey had forwarded me a message from Leanne's phone. One Leanne had sent in the early weeks after the birth, when she was exhausted and scared and honest in the way people are at 3 a.m. In it, Leanne had said, I can't get Vera to stop. She keeps pushing and I don't know how to tell her that. Patrick is never going to agree to this, and honestly he shouldn't have to. I made this bed. I need to figure out how to lie in it. I also had the screenshots Leanne had shown me at Tim Hortons. I typed into the group chat. Before anyone sends another message about what I should do for this child, I want to share something. I posted my mother's message to Marguerite from her church, then the one to cousin Heather about me being too proud to do the right thing. Then I posted Leanne's message to Audrey, the one where Leanne said I shouldn't have to do this. Then I typed, I did not abandon this child. This child was never mine. I have never threatened her, spoken badly about her, or wished her anything but a good life. The woman who is her mother has said clearly and privately that I owe nothing and should not be asked. The only person telling a different story is the one in this group chat who keeps adding me back after I leave it. The group chat went quiet. Then Tyler wrote, That's fair, man. That's fair. Then Aunt Rosemary went silent, which was somehow louder. Then my mother. Patrick, I just want what's best for that little girl. I know you're angry. I typed, I'm not angry, I'm accurate. There's a difference. No response. Fletcher sent me a private message. Uncle Paul vibes. Well done. I didn't respond to the group chat again, but I didn't leave it either. I wanted to be able to read what was said. 2 weeks later my mother called. I answered. I'm not sure why. Maybe because some part of me still believed that people can surprise you. That a woman who raised me and taught me to parallel park and drove 4 hours to be there when my grandfather died might be capable of looking me in the eye and saying something true. Your grandmother's birthday is next month, she said. We're doing dinner at the house. Nana wants everyone there. I said, okay, I'd like you to come, I'll think about it. A pause. I was hoping Leanne might come too, with the baby. I was quiet for long enough that she added, it would mean so much to Nana, she doesn't get around as well anymore, Mom. She's 83. Patrick, Mom. Don't. Her voice changed. The warmth clicked off like a tap. I just want this family to move forward. I know you do. But you moving forward and me moving forward are not the same direction. She was quiet. Then, you could love that little girl. I really believe that. I sat with that for a second. Because it hurt, which I hadn't been expecting. Not because it was manipulative, but because it might also be true. Maybe I could have. Maybe in a different life I would have looked at that baby and found something that felt like mine. But a possibility is not a debt. And love doesn't undo the fact that I'd be sitting across from Leanne at Christmas dinner, pretending the past year hadn't happened. Because my mother had decided that was tidier. Good night, Mom, I said, and I hung up. She called Fletcher the next day. He told me she cried for 20 minutes and said I had become cold and hard and that she didn't recognize me anymore. Fletcher said. She said she didn't recognize you. What did you say? I said, Vera, maybe that's because he finally started acting like himself off. I told him to pick a restaurant and dinner was on me. My grandmother's birthday dinner came around on a Saturday in late November. I went. Because I loved my grandmother and because Nana Evelyn was 83. And had never done anything to me personally. I drove down to Collingwood in my truck and brought wine and flowers and sat beside Nana at the table and listened to her talk about the CBC radio drama she'd been following. Leanne was not there. I had not known until I arrived. My mother had, apparently, asked her and Leanne had declined. I found out from my Aunt Rosemary, who seemed mildly scandalized by the whole thing, and couldn't stop herself from mentioning it. My mother waited until after dessert. She sat down next to me at the kitchen table while everyone else was in the living room. She had that particular expression she gets when she's decided to be gentle, as a strategy. I'm glad you came, she said. I'm glad Nana's 83, I said. She's good. My mother smiled. Then she placed her hand over mine on the table. I want to show you something. She picked up her phone. I knew before she turned the screen toward me. I stood up. Mom, no, she looked startled. It's just a picture. I know what it is. No, she looks like Leanne did at that age. You can barely tell. Mom, I kept my voice low because Nana was 15 feet away and deserved a nice birthday. You don't get to do this. You don't get to bring photos to dinner like evidence you can submit. I've told you where I stand. Using a baby's face to argue against my position is not something I'm going to sit here and accept. Her eyes filled. I just want you to see her. I know what you want. You want me to look at her and feel something that makes your version of this story more convenient. I'm not going to do that. She pulled the phone back against her chest. One day she's going to want to know why her family wasn't there. I looked at my mother steadily. One day she's going to want to know why her father wasn't there. And every adult in this situation who made it easier for him to walk away instead of insisting he show up is going to have to answer for that. Silence. I am not her father, I said. And the only people angry about that are the people who'd rather I carry the weight than look at the person who created it. My mother looked at me, like I had become someone she didn't know how to categorize. Good. Fletcher materialized from the hallway with a piece of birthday cake and a look that said he'd heard most of it. He handed me the cake. Said nothing. My mother stood up and went to the living room. Didn't come back to the table for the rest of the night. Nana Evelyn, apparently having heard something from her armchair, called out, Patrick, don't let your food go cold. Yes, Nana, I said. Fletcher sat down across from me. He took a forkful of his own cake. He looked at the hallway where our mother had disappeared. You know she's going to regroup, he said. Yeah. She's going to try a bigger stage. I had a feeling he was right. My mother had a talent for escalation. Small venue hadn't worked. She would look for an audience. She found one at Christmas. Our family does Christmas Eve at the house in Collingwood. It's been that way since before I was born. Nana Evelyn sits in the same chair. My uncle brings the same terrible eggnog that everyone drinks anyway. Fletcher and I put up the same arguing about the lights that we've been having since 1997. This year, my mother had apparently told Leanne she was welcome, and told her it would be good for the baby to have family around her at Christmas. She had told me nothing about this. I found out when I walked through the door and saw Leanne standing near the fireplace holding a baby in a red sleeper. I stopped. Leanne saw me. Her face went white. She mouthed, I didn't know you'd be here. I mouthed back, same. My mother came out of the kitchen with a dish towel and the expression of someone who has pulled off a complicated logistics operation. Patrick. She crossed the room and took my coat. I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be such a good night. I looked at her. Mom. Come in, everyone's. Mom. She stopped. You did this on purpose, I said quietly. She lifted her chin. I invited my family to Christmas. Both parts of it. We're not both parts of your family. Not anymore. That baby is my grandchild, she is not your grandchild. I said it clearly, without anger, which was harder than saying it with anger. She is the child of a woman who was briefly my wife. That is not a blood connection. That is not a legal connection. That is a story you have decided to tell yourself. My mother's eyes went to the living room. People were watching. Aunt Rosemary, Tyler, Uncle Walt, Nana Evelyn with her tea, and Leanne, holding the baby against her shoulder with the expressions of someone who would rather be anywhere else on earth. My mother said, softly and carefully, wouldn't you just like to hold her? Just once. Just to know, Patrick? No, Mom, you don't get to use a baby at Christmas like a prop, in the argument you're trying to win. My voice stayed low. The room was very quiet. I have told you. I have told you clearly. I am not angry at that child. I am not wishing her anything bad. But you have spent the past 4 months telling people I abandoned her. Telling your church friends. Telling the family group chat. Telling anyone who would listen that I'm too cold and too proud to do the right thing. My mother started to speak. I continued. And the right thing, according to you, is to step into the place her father left empty. But her father is not in this room. Nobody brought him to Christmas. Nobody called him and said this baby needs family. Nobody told Marguerite from St. Andrews that he was too proud to show up. I paused. You're not upset that she doesn't have a father figure. You're upset because if I'm not involved, then what Leanne did, and what that man did, stays visible, and you don't like how it looks. The room was absolutely still. My mother's mouth opened, closed. Leanne had tears running down her face. She said quietly but clearly enough that the room heard it. He's right, Vera. My mother turned to her. He's right, Leanne said again. I told you to stop. I told you months ago. He doesn't owe me this. He doesn't owe her this. She bounced the baby gently. Her voice cracking. I made a choice and I have to live with what that means. You're not helping me by doing this. You're making it worse. The room sat, very quietly with that. My uncle cleared his throat. My cousin Tyler stared at his eggnog. My mother said, I just wanted everyone to be together. Nana Evelyn, from her chair in the corner said, Vera, sit down. My mother looked at her, sit down. Nana Evelyn's voice was quiet and exact. That boy has been patient, let him be. My mother sat. I looked at Fletcher. He gave me a small nod. I looked at Leanne. She was still holding the baby, who had started to fuss. I'm going to go, Leanne said. She picked up the diaper bag from beside the armchair. I'm sorry, Evelyn. Merry Christmas. Nana Evelyn said, drive safe, sweetheart. Leanne looked at me one more time on her way to the door. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. After she left, the party resumed in that careful way parties resume after something uncomfortable. People refreshed their drinks. The eggnog got passed around again. Fletcher put on the Nat King Cole record that always played at Christmas, and my uncle made a comment about the lights being unevenly distributed, which they were. I sat beside Nana Evelyn. She patted my hand without looking at me. You did fine, she said. It didn't feel fine. It rarely does. She sipped her tea. Your mother loves you. She doesn't always know what to do with that. She could try less. Nana Evelyn made a small sound that might have been a laugh. She could, she won't. We sat there for a while and listened to Nat King Cole and the snow ticking against the window. After Christmas, something settled. Not fixed. These things don't fix in one evening because somebody gave a speech beside a decorative nutcracker. But the air changed. Aunt Rosemary called me in January to apologize for the group chat messages. Tyler texted that he had gotten the situation wrong, and he was sorry. My mother did not call for 3 weeks, which was the closest thing to silence she was capable of. Gerald called. Not about the baby. Just to say that Leanne had found a part-time arrangement with her office, and that her parents were coming down to Innisfil on alternating weekends. He said Leanne was doing better. He said he was sorry for the casserole visit. He used the word sorry twice, which I noted because Gerald was not a man who repeated himself. I said, I hope she does well. I mean that. He said, I know you do. That's always been the thing about you, Patrick. Leanne sent a message through Audrey in late January. She had named the baby Margot. She said she thought I might want to know since everyone had been using her as a subject for so long. She also said, Brendan has agreed to supervised visits starting in the spring. The lawyer says it's a start. I read that twice. Then I replied through Audrey. Margot is a good name. I'm glad Brendan is showing up, and I meant it. Not because I'd forgiven everyone involved. Not because the past year had become suddenly manageable to look back on. But because Margot deserved to have her actual father in her life, and every person who had pointed at me to fill that space instead of pointing at him had done her a quiet disservice. My mother sent a card in February, a real one, from a stationery shop, with a stamp and everything. I recognized the effort. 4 pages in her distinctive handwriting, the kind that capitalizes random words and trails off with ellipses. She wrote that she loved me. She wrote that she missed me. She wrote that she believed families could carry more than they thought they could, and that she still felt in her heart that Margot would have benefited from knowing me. She was still, even in the card making the case. I turned the envelope over and wrote on the back, "I know you believe this. I need you to believe me when I say that my distance is not a punishment. It is a decision. There is a difference." I mailed it back. I felt a little guilty. I slept fine. Life moved forward the way it does when you're not paying attention to the narrative of it. I got a bigger project at work. A 40-unit residential development in Barrie's South End that was going to take 18 months and make me very tired in ways I was professionally trained to handle. I bought a proper dining table. I went to see Fletcher in Hamilton twice, and we ate too much and argued about nothing important, and it was the best I felt all winter. I kept to seeing Dr. Osi every other Tuesday. I told him about the Christmas confrontation. He asked how I felt afterward. I said, like I had finally shown up for myself at a time when that mattered. He wrote something in his notes. I did not ask what. I got a new plant. I named it nothing because naming it would jinx it. My father, who is quieter than my mother and has spent most of his life being moved around by her certainty, called me in March. He said, "I handled it wrong from the beginning. I should have told your mother to stop months ago." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I know. That was not a small thing for either of us." Brendan began his supervised visits with Margot in April. I heard this through Audrey. I didn't seek the information, but I didn't stop it from reaching me either. From what I understood, he was awkward at it, which seemed about. Being a father is not a natural talent. It is a practice. You have to show up enough times that it stops feeling like something you're performing. I hoped he showed up. I thought about Margot sometimes. More than I mentioned to anyone. A baby who had come into the world in the middle of someone else's wreckage. Who would grow up asking questions that nobody had clean answers to. I hoped someone told her the truth at an age that made sense for it. Not the whole complicated version all at once, but enough that she didn't grow up inside a fog of carefully managed omissions. I hoped Leanne was honest. I thought she might be. The Leanne I had seen at Tim Hortons, with formula on her sleeve and real exhaustion in her face, looked like someone who was done trying to make the story prettier than it was. I hoped my mother learned the difference between love and arrangement. I was less confident about that one. But I hoped, and I kept this. Being the steady one, the reliable one, the one who shows up. None of that means you are available to absorb every consequence of every choice other people made. Steadiness is not the same as inexhaustibility. Strength is not the same as not being allowed to say no. I didn't abandon Margot. I was never her father. Those are two different sentences, and they both need to be said. Her father was Brendan, and the most useful thing I could do for her. More useful than pretending, more useful than stepping into a space I had no business standing in, was to refuse to make it easier for the people around her, to avoid that fact. So that's what I did. And I'd do it again.